Hello fellow dopheads and beat people. I'm George, the Gentleman Rocker, and this is a special edition, I guess, of the Sound Lab. Let's talk about the circuit and polymeter stuff. If you're not living under a rock or something like that, you may have catched the 1.4 update of the circuit. And with it there are polyrhythms, as they call it, but to be more specific, it's not a polyrhythm, it's polymetric. So polyrhythm would be you have 3 hits in a normal one take, that's in 4/4, 4 hits. So the classic waltz is a 3/4 rhythm, so it's 1 2 3 1 2 3, and when the third step ends it will start again. But if you mix 4/4s and 3/4s, you would get a drifting out of sync, and that is not what is happening in the circuit update. Let's take the idea of polymetric, and that's what the circuit is doing. So let's say we have 4 parts. This would be synth 1, synth 2 and the drum parts. And the first one is 8 steps, half a normal pattern which would be 16, but it's easier this way as they are 8 here. And the next one would be 6. So they would play the first 6 steps in sync, and after that the second synth line would start with the first note again, but the other one would play the 7s, then the 8s, and then the first one would switch over. And this way the second synth line would be on note 3. And they would go on till here, as this one had only 6, and this one would switch again to the beginning, and now the synth 1 would be on step 5 and synth 2 on step 1. So they're constantly drifting. They will eventually, if they run more, switch over more and more and more, and then they will have the last steps at the same step and start again at the first step together. But that would always be the case in some point, but it's not every turn, so they get out of sync. And if you drop in another 2 layers or parts and give them maybe 7 steps or 3, they will also drift, and they will drift more and more. When you start switching patterns, then you can use the instant switch, which is shift pattern, or it will run to the last step and then start with the other pattern on that first step. But it's not necessary the first step of the other sync too. So it could start on maybe the 5th step from the first synth when you switch a pattern on synth 2. And that's something you need to wrap your head around a little bit, because you can't really switch like you would do in a normal setup where every pattern is like 16 steps or so. You always will have this drifting starting points on this various sequencers. It's like sequences running out of sync, not stepwise. They will be quantized steps, but the starting point will float. So it's not a fault from the software when you switch synth 2 to another pattern and it starts in the middle of synth 1. It's because they're drifting. That's what they're built for. I hope it's understandable that this is a feature that you need to wrap your heads around a little bit. It's shaky, kind of wonky melody stuff, but that's what polymeters are all about. It's giving you 7-note rise and fall, arpeggio style melody, and having another one that's not 7 steps but maybe 12, 13, and they start shifting and get very organically mixed into each other. It can sound really bad, but it also can sound really good. It's not as linear as you're probably used to, so it's a little bit wrapping your head around it, but what it can do is give you very organic sounding patches and maybe even drone-like stuff, as a lot of you wanted to use the Novation for some kind of droney stuff. If you have a pattern that plays one note over 16 steps, for instance, and the other one plays another chord or note over 14, and you switch the chords but in a progression that makes sense when they're mixed, you can have a really evolving pad that doesn't give you this step 1 starting point where everything starts again. So the second pad could start like maybe 7 steps and then again after 14 steps, as it's only 7 long, but the other one runs 16, so it starts on step 15 from the first synth, and this way you will not get this step 1 starting point where everything drops down a little bit and starts again. So you could do some really droney stuff, and if you play pads on synth 1 and synth 2 and maybe add kind of melody style pads over it, you can really have some evolving sounds, which could be really nice and you should very well experiment with. So it's an experimental kind of thing, but it really takes your instrument to another level. Now, as you can add samples to the drums and have polymeter stuff on the synths and drums, you can really start to shake up things. So it's a cool thing, and I hope my little explanation helped you to understand why your pattern chaining, or pattern changing, to be honest, you can't chain them, but your changing doesn't start on step 1 every time because of this polymeter stuff. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I will try to help you, and I guess I'll do some more videos explaining this polymeter stuff with some sounds, but this is the first little information to give you an idea why your circuit is not broken, even as it sounds a little bit like it. So I will stop this video here. If you like this video, click the subscribe button. I'll do more of them. Drop some likes and check in next time. I'm George, the Gentleman Rocker. See you later.